watching too. Do you know, ladies and gents, this is day 8 for me of getting up at 3 in the morning, and my brain is starting to fail.
It's starting to go. You can hear it, can't you? Yeah.
You're watching too, and let's stick with breakfast with Steve and I. It's all going pear-shaped. There you go. I'll tell you what, I'll sleep well today.
I tell you what, we'll stop and rewind that, except we can't because we're live across your TV on the UK. No, I'm doing it now.
Let's go to 30 seconds of black silence. That'd be excellent. Okay, let's go through the papers anyway. We'll try
That's a good idea. Let's look at the Times. There's Times reporting that Boris Johnson wants the first flight taking Channel migrants to Central Africa to leave in the next month.
The Guardian says plans to send Channel migrants to Rwanda have been widely condemned, with critics calling the plan inhumane.
The Express takes a favourable view towards the PM's Rwandan migration scheme, noting the vow to end the Channel migrant crisis.
The Mirror criticises the scheme, calling it inhumane and doubting that it will work.
So let's go through the papers now. Joining us this morning, Chief Executive of Demos. Now, I'm not going to do all that again because I got it wrong last time. Let's just say hello to Joanna Williams and Polly Mackenzie. Lovely to see you both. What are we starting with? Natural births.
I'm an expert on this one.
It's made him a bit queasy.
That'll be me. So this is a story which is following on from the big scandal which has rumbled along in the news really for about a month now. It was a report into what was going on with women giving birth at the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital, and a really high rate of babies dying essentially in childbirth. Absolutely horrific treatment of the women who'd given birth at these hospitals.
But because of the culture of, you must do it naturally.
Exactly, and it's that culture which is really continuing, and job adverts which have been published since that report, the Ockenden report, was released just a couple of weeks ago, are still emphasising that they want to recruit midwives who, and I quote from one of the adverts, demonstrates a commitment to promoting normal birth.
Normal.
Exactly, and I'm really glad that you picked up on that word, Anne, because to me that word normal is really loaded. To me, what's being implied by that, what's being meant is a vaginal delivery, but to me what should be a normal birth should be a safe birth. That should be
what's right at the time.
Exactly. The aim should be to have a safe mother and baby.
I'm staggered they're allowed to word the advert in that way, because what they're showing is they're not just saying we just want good qualified midwives, they're saying they want midwives with a certain attitude, really.
Exactly, and it becomes a very political thing. Essentially they're asking for people who have bought into these particular values around natural childbirth, and like I said, the whole idea that this is a normal way to give birth, I think it really stigmatises women who, for whatever reason, weren't able to have a vaginal delivery, had a caesarean section through, even to say kind of through no fault of their own, kind of implies that there's something not normal about that.
I completely agree. I think, what's normal for humans as a species, absent medical intervention, is for lots of women and babies to die. Yeah. I know that I would be dead, and my daughter would be dead, and my sons wouldn't exist if it hadn't been for medical intervention. I failed induction, 3 miserable days, I had an emergency caesarean, and that kept us both alive, and that's really good. Yeah. And I should not be stigmatised, but it's not about me, it's about the reality that humans are just really poorly engineered, and it's amazing that we have such privileged access to brilliant doctors and midwives, and we can keep women safe. And that absolutely should be the goal. It's wonderful, of course. I remember seeing on One Born Every Minute, the childbirth show, there was a 16-year-old who had, not great really that she was pregnant and having a baby, but nevertheless, she had half a paracetamol, got the baby out in 3 hours. If that works for you, brilliant, amazing. Some women have the hips for it. Some babies seem perfectly designed. Lots of us aren't, and there's nothing wrong with that because we can be brilliant mums, and the kids are.
No, it's just as you said. That actually, a normal birth is risky, and as you said, without doctors and nurses and wonderful midwives around, a lot of people would die. But I just cannot. But I can't believe they're allowed to say it. Steam coming out of my ears now.
Well, I think for a number of years now, the idea of having a midwife-led unit has kind of been all the rage, and it's been promoted to women as being more natural, more kind of holistic, kinder, nicer. But it can mean, in some cases, that the doctor or the consultant, if as an emergency, is actually many miles away, perhaps needing to get a taxi. If I was in an emergency situation, I would not want to be like worrying about the roadworks and the doctor getting delayed in coming to see me.
Well, it's one subject I feel slightly out of my depth.
Sorry.
I don't know why.
That's why I chose it.
Well, thank you very much indeed. To The Guardian, Polly, looking at these waiting times for routine treatments on the NHS. Talked about this a lot yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, you know, The Guardian now saying that this is basically as high as it's been since the mid-90s. 1 in 10 almost adults is on a waiting list for NHS treatment. I just think these problems are going to get worse and worse, and we haven't even begun to work out what we as a country want to do about it. You know, we've got this new tax that's supposedly going into the NHS. We put the £350 million extra after Brexit into the NHS, and yet still waiting lists are going up and up. And at the core of it, I think, is a complete failure of workforce planning. We don't have the staff. People are burned out by the pandemic. Unless we address that, get more people into training, we're never going to get over the hump of this.
I think that's a really important point that Polly's making there, because I think for too often, whenever problems, and let's face it, these problems with the NHS crop up so routinely, you can almost set your clock by it. But the solution always seems to be, oh, we need more money, we need more money. I think there is a bit of a realisation amongst the general public now that you could just pour infinite sums of money almost into the NHS and it wouldn't actually get to the root cause of
you need
the
better
problems.
planning, don't you?
Yeah,
Certainly
but
with recruitment and
reform is a very difficult thing to do.
Certainly.
It takes a brave politician, and then when they do something which they think is brave, they mess it up. The whole Jeremy Hunt thing has proved to be a bit of a disaster, hasn't it?
But it's also interesting that whatever you do to the NHS, people say that it's privatisation. I was involved in 2012 reforms, and people said that they were privatisation. The government is now basically repealing all of that legislation, replacing it with something completely different. People say that that's privatisation, and I genuinely don't understand, because it means you can't have a real conversation about a good way to run the health service, because everybody just always says the same thing, which isn't even based in reality.
Yeah. Let's have a look at Elon Musk, everyone's favourite entrepreneur.
So he's put in a £33 billion or $43 billion bid to buy Twitter. I think
why he wants it.
Well, do you know what? I don't think it actually matters, because I think when you've got that much money, you know, he can buy Twitter in the same way I might go and buy myself a new dress from Marks and Spencer's. I think this is probably a bit of loose change for him. But I think what's really interesting about the story is how everybody's freaking out in response to it. And the reason why they're freaking out is because Elon Musk has come out and made some statements in favour of free speech. He's described himself as a free speech absolutist, and he says he wants to kind of row back on the censorship that's on Twitter and on social media. And, you know, I think kind of good luck to him, because I think there is censorship on Twitter. I think that's absolutely for sure. The fact that President Trump was taken off Twitter, you know, that's absolutely unprecedented. The democratically elected president of the kind of free world.
But when you look at some of the stuff when President Trump was saying things which were categorically not true, and as a man of tremendous influence, that's problematic, isn't it?
Well, the thing is then, what you need people to challenge that and take it up. And what really strikes me about the alarmism over Elon Musk taking over Twitter, and I chose the story in the Daily Mirror because the Daily Mirror kind of puts in as its subheadline, kind of shock horror. This might help Trump back into the White House. You think, you know, are your arguments to challenge Trump really so pathetic? You know, have you really got no arguments that can take him on intellectually or take him on politically? You need censorship. You think censorship's the only...
But Elon Musk himself has shown a certain disdain for the truth or for slander and libel, because he has been outrageous in some of his comments. I think particularly about the diver, the British diver, who was part of the team that rescued the boys from the cave.
No, I agree with that.
I mean, he said some outrageous things, and he wants to own the very platform.
Well, what's interesting to me is he says that what we need is absolute free speech in order to improve people's trust in Twitter. Now, that doesn't really make sense to me, because absolute free speech, a reasonable point of view, but that means that people will go into Twitter knowing there might be lies on there might be misinformation. So as a trusted platform, that's more of a problem for me. I think the reality is we get very confused. We think of things like Twitter as some sort of piece of democratic infrastructure that therefore must have the absolute rules of democracy and free speech on them. But actually what it is a private company that should probably be engineered to meet the needs of its users and its customers, its advertisers. And actually what its users want is a more community guide rules where they want misinformation removed, where they want racism removed, and essentially it's that thing of being able as a private company to meet the needs of your customers. And you wouldn't expect a shopping centre to say, oh, free speech, anybody can do everywhere. Come in and punch people, come in and shout abuse. So the point is, if you're running a shopping centre, you want to create an environment that's welcoming and works for the people who you serve. The same should be true. Exactly, the same should be true same for Twitter or Facebook. Actually, a rules-based environment is what works for the majority, and that's how you run a private, profitable company.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I mean, for one thing, there are millions of Twitter users in countries all around the world, so to talk of them as one kind of homogenous group, this is what they want. Do you know what? I mean, I use Twitter, I know other people who use Twitter, we disagree fundamentally on lots of different things, and to me that's the beauty of a platform like Twitter. I also think it's not good enough really to say, well, these are private companies so they can set their own rules, because so these social media companies have become so influential, so powerful, they've effectively become the public square. They provide a voice, and they get reported on so often in the media nowadays. What people are tweeting becomes the story. But where I do agree is that I'm not, as somebody who is very, very pro-free speech, I would describe myself as a free speech absolutist. I don't have faith in Elon Musk, and this is also why I laugh at all the panic that's going on here, because the idea that Elon Musk is going to create this kind of free speech paradise, if you like, is not going to happen. He has his own whims.
Anyone who wants to call himself an absolutist, anyway, is a bit sort of...
But fundamentally, if you
Joanna.
if you
Joanna
do...
does. We're out of time. Ladies, I'm really sorry. I'm going to curb your free speech because we're out of time. We'll be back in the next hour where Joanna, you can tell us about Myling Class and her sparkling new jewellery, which you will want to know all about, ladies and gents.
All right, now you've mentioned it.
But it is 8:49.